Nerds. I'm Aubrey.
And I'm Peyton.
And today we are going to be reviewing one of the more popular dark academia fantasy books out there, the Atlas Six.
So, join us for a cup of coffee as we dive between these paper sheets. Alright, so the Atlas Six was originally self-published in 2020 before being picked up by Tor, revised, and then traditionally published in 2022. With that said, we have a little added element here. I have read the traditionally published version, and as you can see, Aubrey has read the self-published version. So we're going to get into some differences later.
Yes, they're not huge, but they are definitely there. But before all of that, we are going to give our non-spoiler review of the Atlas Six, what we think, our star rating, starting with a quick little intrigue summary to let you know what the book's kind of about. So, the Alexandrian Society, caretakers of the lost knowledge from the greatest civilizations of antiquity, are the foremost secret society of magical academians in the world. Those who earn a place among the Alexandrians will secure a life of wealth, power, and prestige beyond their wildest dreams. And each decade, only 6 mostly uniquely talented magicians are selected to be considered for the initiation. Enter the latest round of the 6. We have Libby Rhodes and Nico de Verona, unwilling halves of an unfathomable whole, who exert uncanny control over every element of physicality. Brianna Mori, a naturalist who can intrude the language of life itself. Parisha Kamali, a telepath who can traverse the depths of the subconscious, navigating worlds inside the human mind. Callum Nova, an empath easily mistaken for a manipulative illusionist who can influence the intimate workings of a person's inner self. Finally, there is Tristan Kane, who can see through illusions to a new structure of reality, an ability so rare that neither he nor his peers can fully grasp its implications. So that is a mouthful, and that is also kind of a sneak peek of the prose of this book, which is the first thing we have to talk about before anything else.
Yes.
Is that not only was the summary was prose-y. I mean, how you're gonna describe 2 of the characters as unwilling halves of an unfathomable whole, and you're like, what the fuck does that mean? But it sounds really pretty, and that's this book.
Yes, I actually was able to watch a book talk Zoom with Olivie Blake, and the interviewer said, are you a huge fan of Shakespeare? Where's your beginnings? And she's like, actually, other than Romeo and Juliet, which I read in high school, as we've talked about in previous episodes, of course. No, I just write she just writes pretentious. It just comes... That's just, she goes to write, and that's what comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Take it or leave it, that's how she writes.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of the stained glass, you're going to be going through this, and there is a heavy stained glass that you are consuming this story through. It's pretentious, but it's also kind of a vibe, and this book is a dark academia, fantasy setting, and I think the contents of this book do match that level of prose. If I was reading, a regular high school romance story and it had this prose, I would be like, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to be? But this book is pretentious, and the plots of it is pretentious, and the characters are pretentious.
Yes.
And so it all just kind of works.
Yes, I feel because it became such a book-talky book, it was huge on Book Talk, it even says it on some of them, that there's, they market it as such. And yeah, so people are going into this thinking it's going to be an easy read. And I can tell you, I read books all the time, and I love dark academia. I love fantasy. This book was especially in the beginning, the first 200 pages, at least. The first one. I had a hard time. I actually had to talk to Aubrey because I knew she already read it, and I was like, hey, am I stupid? Can I not read fantasy because I'm having a very, very hard time with this book? And she's like, no, it's just very pretentious, and her prose is Shakespeare in ways. and you'll read some lines and you're like, what?
Yeah, like what is that? What could that ever mean?
What are you trying to say? Yes. So
This also, another misconception about this book is that it is YA because it was popular on Book Talk, and a lot of Book Talk books are YA. This is not YA. This is adult fantasy. There is a huge learning curve, and it's not that the world building is particularly complex, because the root essence of the world building is this, secret society. There's these magicians who are called, I think, mediums.
Yeah.
In this world, and there's different types in like schools of magic. They're coming together to do research. The world building is not complex, and so that's not what makes the learning curve so hard. It's the language.
Yeah.
And I will say I enjoyed the language. I liked a little bit of a pretentious read. Now, if this book was any longer, it gets tough. The further you go through, it's not like, there's no way to say that this is an easy read, because it is not. It is a vibey read. This is the book that you're gonna like read at a coffee shop and be like, I am better than you.
I have my pretentious urban fantasy read.
Yeah, this is you gotta be in your pretentious era. You gotta be like, I am an English major, even if you aren't reading this book.
Okay, another big part of this book is pacing. As I said before to Aubrey, and I mentioned before, the first 200 pages, along with the language, it takes a little bit to get to the root of the issue here. And so, the pacing, I will say my favorite part of the book is the ending. And that's not always the case with reading. Of course, you want a good ending, but if you really want to read this book, I, of course, recommend to read this book before the vibes. Is the ending is crazy, but the pacing to get to that part, it can be like climbing a mountain. It really, that's what it feels like.
It's really awkward because the very beginning, like the prologue to this book, is amazing, and you're brought into this very interesting concept of this secret society being initiated. The fact that only 5 people get to move on to the next round, like there's academic rivalry going on, and so you're brought into the book and you're like, oh, this is really cool. And you get like, there's pretentious language, but you're like, awesome. You get 40 pages in, and then you're like, and then it just drops.
Yeah.
And then for like so much of the middle of the book, it is just vibes. It is just these characters doing things, and they're not really doing much.
Yes, it's like we're kind of studying, there's like the sexual tension between a lot. Like, it's almost like Olivie was setting up the tone and the voice of the book, and then after a while, it just drops. So with that being said, getting into characters.
Yes.
She sets up the tone, and there's like the stereotypical like pretty girl, there's the like douchebag, there's the like I'm a good girl, there, you have these stereotypes, but after a while they kind of bled into one another for me personally. And with that being said, it's told in third person. So when you're reading these characters, and when each chapter is dedicated to a character, sometimes you're like, okay, I'm supposed to be in their head. But then with that being said, we all kind of find our favorite characters. And so maybe when you go to read like a Nico chapter, you're like, oh, I can't read another Nico chapter. And I think that's what makes the pacing with the characters, it can make it hard to read with the language on top of it all. So you really have to be committed.
No, this is definitely, it's a character book. And I think that that's a big misconception that a lot of people have. It's kind of like, if anyone has read Six of Crows is a character book. Yes, there is a heist going on, but the heist is like the back third of the book, and everything before that is all just plots and vibes and getting to know these characters. However, the difference is one, Leigh Bardugo's language is much more accessible. It's YA. 2, these characters are much more fleshed out, whereas I feel like in the Atlas 6, the priority of this story is the vibes and getting you to the last bit. And the way that it's sectioned, because it's broken up into parts, which I can admire, and it's sectioned into the fields of study that the characters are doing. And I think that's the biggest pitch of the book, is that this book is about the academia, and no one understands the academia.
Yes.
I didn't know. I'm not in this field of study, and I mean, it's magic, so it's all made up. And so there's so much science and discovering things going on. My husband is a rocket scientist, and I was like, maybe you should read this book. I think you might get it, because I never took a physics class a day in my life. I appreciated the vibes.
Yes.
But the idea is that these characters become like all like morally gray, and like you don't know who's gonna do what and all of this stuff. And so then like Peyton said, they start blending because they're all morally gray, and like their few like character archetypes are fading and twining, and everyone wants to have sex with everyone. And there's just a lot of vibes going on here.
And I was like, aren't you also see the best of the best? Like, let's get it together, gang. Like, get it together. So yeah, with that being said, it's a complex book. Let's jump into our star ratings here. Aubrey, give it to me.
Okay. I think that this is honestly like, if I could do halves, I would give this like 3.5, almost 4. I really like the vibes of this book, and honestly, that is the beginning and the end of this. I like the vibes, and so I just want to read it. But like, if I'm comparing it to other adult fantasies, I don't feel as connected to this story as I wish I was. But I would recommend it to people because it's got really cool vibes.
Yes, right there with you. I'm going to give this a solid 3 because of the vibes and because of her attention to detail. And honestly, I love Olivie Blake, and I respect her as a writer, and I understand
it's beautiful writing.
This is her start into a trilogy, and you know, when I was listening to her like book talk interview about just her as an author, she said this was very daunting for her. And may I add, like, let's just look at the illustrations that she puts into her work. Look at that, guys.
They're so good. Okay, so they got advanced from the first one, because even the self-published one has illustrations.
Yes, our first
that
difference
are
here. Our first difference.
Well, I'll put the art much better on the screen so you guys can all see. But yes, there's such beautiful art, and it's such a cool story.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I will give this a 3 out of 5, because of her like commitment to it. So, and it's always cool seeing the authors with how they see their own characters. So, 3 out of 5.
All right, y'all. So now we're going to shift gears and talk about spoilers. So if you haven't finished the book yet and you don't want to be spoiled, turn away, read the book, and come back so you can hear all of our thoughts, spoilers included.
All the tea. All right. So let's start with the twist that isn't fully a twist.
Really.
So the Atlas 6, the Atlas 5 actually.
Yes.
We learned that 6 will not make it, only 5 will, which means there is now not only competition, but someone has to die.
Yes, because originally they're like, oh, only 5 of us are making it to the end. Someone else is just going to get like kicked out and sent home. But no, there's too many secrets to this society. You have to kill someone. And they're like, what? The funniest bit to me is that they're all figuring it out separately, and it gets to, there's this one scene, at least in the self-published version, where they're all sitting around, and it's kind of, Atlas is there, and it's kind of hinted at that they're like trying to ask him, like, do we really have to kill someone? And Nico is like, oh shit, because they realize that Libby is the only one who doesn't know that it's going to end in having to kill someone. And Nico's like, crap, I didn't tell her. Like, we were supposed to be, like, kind of having an alliance here.
Yes.
And I didn't tell her.
Yes. And yeah, so now this is the part where I feel like their characters come back to life. Because now it's like you see the internal conflict with each character in their respective stereotype. And I think that is where we see the differences with all of them. But also, like, it's hard seeing the, like, actual nice guy be like, oh, I have to kill someone, and then the asshole will be like, oh, well, I can kill someone. I can
Whatever.
Yes, so crazy twist.
Crazy twist. But, like, you can kind of see it coming.
Yeah.
Because it's a secret society, and I don't think it's given that much weight. Like, I think the bigger thing that the book is trying to do is you don't know which one is going to be killed, because you have Libby and Nico who have the same power, but there's this, like, going on thing that they need each other to, like, be at their full potential, but they have the same power, so you're like, oh, one of them is going to be taken out. But, like, they're also the two, like, more likable characters. Then you have Callum, who is, like, clearly an asshole. Everyone hates him, but he's super powerful. And it leads up to, like, they're all deciding, like, oh, well, who should we kill? And there's kind of this idea where, like, oh, hey, Tristan, who's, like, a fairly nice guy, you're the closest with Callum for whatever reason. Why don't you kill him? Then we get brought to this, like, conversation at the very end of the book where Tristan and Callum are talking, sitting down, and they're just kind of, like, talking casually about it, except they both know that Tristan's there to kill Callum. And there's just, like, this awkward tension because Callum is just so cocky. He's like, you're not going to kill me. I know you're here to kill me, but it's not gonna happen.
Yes, and I love it because as the reader, you kind of, like, see this, like, I see this a lot in movies too, where it's like, oh, we're gonna play it cool until we're not. So it's like, oh crap, like, this is gonna happen, or, you know, because he knows he's gonna turn around and it's gonna be like a switcheroo and then we're gonna lose a character. But that all gets interrupted.
Yes. A scream. Callum's, like, picks up the knife and he's like, I'm gonna kill you. And then there's a scream.
Yes.
Because it's fiction and so it's perfectly timed.
I know. In a perfect storm of events, we hear a scream, and that is our dear, dear character and good girl, Libby.
Yes. The only one you're supposed to truly like. Like, she's the only one who, like, the rest are very morally gray, and she's just a tryhard.
Yeah.
And I think that's exemplified in the fact that she's the last to figure out that they have to kill people.
Right.
But
yeah, and, you know, in a character-driven book with all these characters, you're supposed to find your favorites. Olivie still does a hard thing that I think writers in fantasy have to do, especially with as many characters, and kind of show us, like, hey, like, Libby is kind of the main character in a sense. You kind of lose that during the book because I think you have to. Because this is not Libby's story, by any means.
No.
This is not Libby's story. But because of what is going to lead you into the second book, Libby's personal life needs to have more weight to it.
Yep.
Because of this. I mean, we basically kind of start the book with her and Nico, and when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, like, they're going to be the best friend duo, and then there's going to be all these side characters. Which is not true.
Right.
Which is not true.
No.
Every character has its purpose, but I think Olivie did a good job showing us, like, yeah, but, like, let's keep Libby kind of in the front of your mind as far as plot progression goes.
Remember her, remember this, because it's going to be important, because we don't see a lot of other people's home life, but we do see hers, and we do see her shitty boyfriend, and you're like, oh, this is all just because, like, she's gonna end up with Nico, this enemies to lovers, academic rivals plot. And then at the end, all the other characters discover her dead, bloody body, And this is one of the biggest differences between the self-published and the traditionally published that I have seen online, because I read this as the self-published, and we're in Tristan's head when this his point of view when we see this, and Tristan doesn't see anything. He, like, everyone's freaking out and he sees an empty bedroom and he's like, what are you freaking out about? Whereas in your version, Tristan does see all of the blood.
Yes, but we find out, and then, oh my gosh, I was not expecting it to switch to Ezra's point of view.
Yeah,
I was like, why is this, like, shithead back? Like, what?
Yeah, why is this random character back?
And then I felt the ick, because, like, Libby loved Ezra. And then we find out all this, like, crap about how, like, kind of their relationship was fake so he could get ahead and use her, basically. Oh my gosh. Were you expecting Ezra to come back around? Because I was not.
No.
I thought he served his purpose to start this, like, enemies to lovers relationship, which, may I add, I was really excited about.
And then didn't happen.
And then it wasn't happening all book. I was like, what is going on? I was like, this is so stupid. And
she expertly like lays the foreshadowing there, and you were like, oh, you toss Ezra so far aside, you know, whatever, older stupid boyfriend, and then you get to the end and you're in his point of view and you're like, why am I here? And it's because he's a time-traveling weirdo from the past who, like, made this pact with Atlas, and they were going to change the world and destroy the society, but then they didn't, because now Ezra's in the future and he had fake dated Libby, and then Atlas was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore, but Ezra's like, I am doing this. I have this whole secret society, like, where was our bro pack? And I don't know who was the villain. Is it Ezra and Atlas? Because they are also against each other.
Mm-hmm. And then Dalton's worked in there somewhere, kind of like...
Yeah, Dalton's like, I'm the only one who could have done this. Oh, that's another big difference, is that he told... Everyone knows in the self-published version that Dalton's the only one who could have animated the fake body. But in the published version, only Parisha knows, which I'm sure is going to come and play her having this, like, power move of extra knowledge in the second book.
Yes. And I like that, because that goes back into her character, because Parisha is a manipulative type of person. Right. And obviously there's some, like, sexual tension between her and Dalton. It jumps off the page at you. I mean, she's already kind of a sexualized character, but I think she does that to a fault. So it's actually kind of fun knowing that they are secrets within secrets within secrets, because at the end of the day, they're like, but I need to look out for myself. They can't really look out for each other. It's so complex. And I think this is what makes this book worth reading, because it sets up the story so well, because we know this is a trilogy. So when you go into the Atlas Paradox and then the Atlas Complex, like, you understand the root of the story. I don't know if the story should have been shorter. I don't know what. But it takes us a freaking journey to get to this point. A freaking journey.
I wish there would have been more action in the middle instead of such a large focus on the academia, because that's how it's even sectioned out, is like the things that they're learning, and I just don't care. Like, I don't care. I'm here for the characters. If I'm here for the characters and not the plot, then I want the characters. I don't want the studying. Like, yes, they're doing academia because, like, that's the dark academia vibes, but, like, give me less academia and more character building. Yes. But I don't know. I am excited to see how these play out. I have the Atlas Paradox. Yeah. I have not started it, but I have it. Peyton and I went on, like, release day out and got them. We went to both Barnes & Nobles for the gold version for me and Target for the silverly version for her. And then I did it. I haven't touched it.
I just love, like, well, I mean, I just got a signed version of One for My Enemy, which is another one of Olivie Blake's books. Her covers, and I think it's Alone with You in the Ether something like
Yes.
that. They are just, oh my gosh, her book covers are so good. And
So pretty.
I mean, Tor is like famous, I don't say infamous, but famous for their like amazing book covers. And these are just like, and I saw what the Atlas Complex is gonna be, and it's gonna be like a moody blue color.
Ooh.
Super excited to have these on my bookshelf. I mean, they just look so nice together.
Yeah.
And the gold
gorgeous.
is beautiful as well. Yeah, so theories for the future. I mean, I'm about this far into it. I'm having a hard time. I'm not gonna lie. It doesn't stop. She doesn't stop. But, you know, with that being said, beautiful illustrations again, so look forward to that once you're done reading. Like I said, it is nice having a better understanding of the characters, better understanding of like what's going on, but you're still gonna get that prose, that, you know, that very mature like fantasy. I don't know, like sometimes I'm like, is this word vomit? But it's also,
Is this word? Yeah.
but yeah, so I love Olivie Blake, and I like where the story is going. That she has said, like, you know, writing a series is very, very hard. And this is her first big one. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
I think the third book is going to be really good. I
do too.
I think her issue is that it's so character based and it's taking so long to get into it because she was adding things she didn't need. But that's because the ending of the Atlas 6 had to be that ending. Like it had to be a full book's length, and it had to be that ending.
Yes.
And I think that is the issue, is that more should have been added to the Atlas 6 to make the middle good. But I think that once she gets to that third book and all of the things have been layered how they should be, I think the third book is gonna be like really, really good. Like the payoff's gonna be high.
Yes, I think that this series is just going to take off. But it is just one of those book series that you just have to put the time and effort into. Just
absolutely
going through it. Which, you know, as for if you're someone who just likes a quick read, I don't know, pick up a YA, an actual YA fantasy, because if you're going to this book expecting YA, you are going to be very disappointed. You're going to be disappointed. It doesn't make it a bad book, it just makes it more complex. Hence why maybe the last book is called Complex for a reason. She's like, okay. But
okay,
no,
guys, this is complex, please.
Yes, so let's just get into like maybe like a quick sprinkling of like, where do you think this whole Ezra and Libby thing's going quick?
I think that in the second book, we're going to see Libby figuring out the whole Ezra thing, and she's going to see more and more on his side. However, I think by the third book, things are going to hit the fan. I think by the end, both Atlas and Ezra are going to have to like die or be killed. I don't think either one of them is right, and that's going to be the point of like coming to this moment.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with Callum, because Callum's horrible, but I think he's going to be a necessary tool, and I think that's going to be really dived into. And so I don't know what happens to him by the end. I can see Parisha totally becoming a villain.
Yeah, like a plot twist, like her and Dalton like totally go bad. I do think there's going to be a plot twist villain somewhere in here. A lot of times authors will be like, oh, this is the bad person, this is the bad, and then it's gonna be like, bam, pow, like, no, this is the bad person the whole time. And like, you didn't see that coming, just like we didn't see Ezra coming. So right now it's like, in our mind, we feel like Ezra is this bad person, but who knows? Maybe he's like, I'm actually trying to rescue you, Libby. This is why I don't agree with Atlas anymore, because he has turned into an absolute villain, and maybe, like, it's literally called the Atlas 6. So what if he's trying to start this, like, revolution army, like, there's only so many people in this society that have power, so I'm gonna get the most powerful and like take over the world or something crazy like that. Like,
I think Ezra is going to be like Coin, and Atlas is like Snow, where it's kind of like Atlas is the villain, but like he's the villain who's been like clear from the very beginning that he's just the representation of this society. Whereas Ezra, I think in the next book you're gonna be like, oh my god, like Ezra's right. Like he isn't the villain. This was, the point. And then I think in the third book, you're gonna be like, no, he's not. He is the villain. Like, that end scene of Hunger Games shit.
Yes, I think it's going to take a lot of twists and turns, but as always, these are just theories, and
yes.
we will probably be completely wrong, but it's just fun to think of what can be. So I'm just gonna keep on trucking along.
Yeah.
Everyone,
I'll
wish
pick it
me
up.
luck. We're just gonna keep grooving with it. But yes, here they are in all their beautiful glory.
That is all we have time for today. Let us know, what did you think of the Atlas 6? If you haven't read it, will you, after our stunning review? And where do you think this dark academia novel will go?
Yes, and also let us know if you want us to review the Atlas Paradox once we're both done reading it. And then the Atlas Complex comes out in January 2024. So let us know if you want us to continue reading and reviewing this series, because it's been a ton of fun to talk about.
Yes. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us, and happy reading.